What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into another edition of Talking with Teel. We are so excited about this, and what better time with Brent Pry out at Virginia Tech and the future uncertain in Blacksburg. All that and much more coming up on Talking with Teel, which starts right now. And we record on Wednesday, September 17th, 2025 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And we are so thrilled to be joined by the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. David, thank you again for hopping on. I know it's a busy time of year, but there's plenty to talk about. Yes. Let's start there. I want to go back to Brent Pry's tenure. 31-0 against Old Dominion at Lane Stadium. My big question is, how did it get to this point? How did it get here, and how do you digest the last couple of days?
Well, I mean, there's so much to unpack here. And the way I kind of distilled it as I was driving home Sunday morning, you go back to the Fuente era, and Justin was renowned as what? A quarterback whisperer and an offense guy. And what became his undoing? The quarterback play and the offense. Enter Brent Pry, renowned defensive coordinator at Penn State. And what happened the last 2 weeks at Lane Stadium? He fired his defensive coordinator in the offseason to upgrade, and then they get outscored over a 4-quarter span at home by Vandy and Old Dominion 62-0. I mean, it became untenable, and they gambled on a rookie head coach, and they got scorched. And it was evident throughout his tenure, and there was no... you think of a learning curve and trending upward. And aside from the 2023 season with 5 wins in 7 games, albeit against some compromised opponents, that was the only hint of momentum in 3+ seasons.
Teel, I don't think it came as a surprise to anybody on Sunday that this is the decision that came down. Are you surprised at all there wasn't another announcement on Sunday, another firing that came along with Brent Pry?
I think we all thought it was possible, Andy, as did I. And I suspect Whit Babcock thought it was possible as well. But I think people who are like pounding on the table and demanding his ouster, yeah, you can make the case, because more and more Power 4 athletic directors are judged through a singular lens, and that is the state of your football program. And the state of Virginia Tech football is clear. It is down. It may be even at rock bottom right now. But Whit Babcock and Tim Sands have been working together for almost a dozen years right now. They are very comfortable with one another, and I think Tim Sands has Whit Babcock's back. And again, we mentioned this last week because we were all at the Board of Visitors retreat out at the golf course. Whit was very well received there. Now, could it have been a public face? Absolutely. But he received no pushback, no criticism. And I walked out of there thinking, the board supports Whit as well. So to those who are looking for an imminent announcement of his departure, I think they're going to be disappointed.
Do you think it's inevitable at some point, though? Imminent is one thing, a couple weeks. Inevitable a couple months down the line. They're obviously going to hire a new football coach. It sounds like they're going to hire a GM for football. Is Whit a part of this athletic department going forward beyond that? Will he be working with those guys? Do you think he gets shown the exit after that?
I think Whit Babcock will be the athletic director when the 2026 football season kicks off. Now, will he be the athletic director in 2031 when the Hokies open the season in the Duke's Mayo Classic.
Important stuff to get
against
locked
the
down
Suns.
ahead of time, by the way.
Right, right. No, he won't be, and he wouldn't have been if Brent Pry had gotten it turned around, and let's say had built on the momentum of 7-6 in 2023, and maybe goes 8-4 last year, 9-3 this year, 10-2, and it trends upward. I think Witt would have walked away voluntarily. I don't think he sees himself doing this for 5 or 10 more years, and never did. What I think he desperately wants to do, because he has a true affection for the institution, is he wants to get football right. He doesn't want his Virginia Tech epithet to be he ruined Hokies football and never fixed it. Is that an ego thing? Yes. But I think it's also an obligatory thing. As much as he as high as he regards Virginia Tech, he feels an obligation to get this right and desperately wants to be a part of the effort to get it there.
What's your feel on what Witt's role will be in terms of what Andy just mentioned? Hiring a football coach, potentially hiring a general manager. It seems like the Board of Visitors and Tim Sands kind of have their hands all over it, but an athletic director being in that position but not necessarily being the guy making those decisions just seems like a weird role.
It is. And David, Witt's on a short leash. He knows it and he understands it. Does he like it? I'm guessing probably not. And it's going to be fascinating to watch the process unfold. We're not going to be privy to the internal dynamics of this search committee and what voices carry the most weight. But you guys both mentioned the prospect of a general manager. I don't think there's any prospect. It's going to happen. And the question is timing. Can they get a general manager on board in time to assist in the search? I think that would be ideal. I don't know if it's feasible, but that relationship between the general manager and Witt, that will probably determine, perhaps in large measure, his future at Virginia Tech. But I really don't believe that there are back channel plans to dismiss the athletic director within the next year.
Was there any sort of awkwardness having him speak to the media yesterday, do you think, and not answer questions when he wasn't the decision maker in this whole thing?
Well, the decision maker, Carter, you mean in terms of
Removing
the dismissal
Brent
of
Pry.
Brent Pry?
Correct. Yes, sir.
I think he was totally on board with this. It's not like the board and President Sands dismissed Brent Pry over the objections of Whit Babcock. He was there. He saw it Saturday night. We all saw it. He knew it was untenable. And at some point, you have to give your fans a signal that you care and that you're doing something, or you risk having an empty lane stadium for the remainder of 2025. Now, will they fill the stands for Philip Montgomery? I don't know. But I think a lot of fans are at least encouraged, hey, they're doing something. But more to your point, was it awkward for him to go in front of the media yesterday? No. Was it awkward that he didn't take questions? Yes. I think, and Andy, I'll be interested in your take. If you had one question to ask Witt yesterday, what would it have been? And then I'll tell you what mine would have been.
My most curious question is, what is his role going to be in this athletic department? It feels like they have defanged him a bit in terms of handling football. How can you be the lead of an athletic department and not really have much say over football? That seems like what it is right now. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that would have been among mine. And then after you asked that, my follow-up question would have been, what have you learned from your 3 previous football searches as an athletic director, 2 at Virginia Tech and 1 at Cincinnati, that will inform how you approach this search? Now, all searches are different, And we're clearly in a different era of intercollegiate athletics and especially major college football. But I'd be very interested to know what, if anything, he would take from those searches and change as he approaches this one.
For everybody listening out there,
And then-
that's the correct answer to what the first question should be. When the Hall of Famer says that's what he would have asked first, that's the correct answer. So,
And then just to go back to why wasn't there or should there have been multiple dismissals on Sunday? If that was Virginia Tech's plan all along, then do it on Sunday. Why wait? Georgia Tech has the template out there. September 2022. Jeff Collins, you're gone. Todd Stansberry, you're gone. Same day. And it was the same month. It was September. They got an AD on board like that in Jay Batt. And then he decided at season's end, after Brent Key performed so well, he kind of had it fall into his lap. Hey, Brent Key is a Georgia Tech guy. The team is playing hard for him. Let's retain him. And seems to have worked out pretty well, even for Jay Batt, who parlayed it into a better job at Michigan State.
Teal, I'm curious your thoughts on how you think this general manager position could play out. Who reports to who? Who is going to be higher on the pecking order here? I think you see this becoming more common in college sports. Very different ways people are doing it. I think at Stanford, Andrew Luck very much has the power. He's going to hire the next head coach. The head coach will be responsible to him, report to him. Not the case at North Carolina. I don't think Mike Lombardi is reporting to, or Bill Belichick is reporting to anybody there. Maybe not even the, AD at that school.
Correction, Andy. Bill Belichick is reporting to Jordan Hudson.
That's true. That's true. That's a very messy chain of command there. How do you think this works with Virginia Tech? Traditionally in college, the head coach has been the guy. Everything surrounds that guy's vision for the program. In the NFL, the head coach, can get fired by general managers there. They have a lot of say in this. What do you think that dynamic will be at Virginia Tech going forward when they make this position available?
I don't know, and I think a lot will depend on who the general manager is and what his or her particular skill sets are. And Andy, I would flip it back to you with a question on this. Has the role of a college football head coach become too large to handle all those things that you're talking about? Salary cap, player retention, acquisition, all of it. And coaching on the field. I listened to your all's emergency pod Sunday night, and what Chris said really resonated. Virginia Tech needs a ball coach. They need a guy who knows how to manage a game and manage an organization. And that guy, he can't be involved or oversee directly day-to-day every single thing. It's an impossible task. And that's the professional model. That's the professionalization of intercollegiate athletics. And I believe you mentioned Andrew Luck at Stanford. I mean, he made the decision, he made the announcement when they fired Troy Taylor during the offseason. Now, obviously, there were some extenuating circumstances there that went beyond just simply on the field results. But I think Ron Rivera has similar power at Cal. And they're off to a good start, but a lot of people, thought the coach out there was on thin ice. But I think no matter how the rest of the season transpires, Ron Rivera will be making that call.
You made the point about what is the role of the head football coach going forward. I mean, yes, it has to be very involved on the field. I think, all of a sudden these coaches have to be negotiators and understand finances and what a player's worth and stuff like that. And I think sometimes their judgment can be clouded because they're so close to the situation. We absolutely have to pay this guy. The GM, I feel like, needs to come in and have some sense of detachment from that, some business sense, somebody that can step back and say there are other options that you can go out there and do. And you talk about how big the job is in college. I mean, they've added a whole other job to the plate of the head coach now, and you have to divest a little bit. You have to have other people in the business to do that. And I think Tech with Pry, it seemed like his solution was always Michael Hazel can handle it. chief of staff can handle that. And he's got other stuff to worry about. He can't handle all this other stuff. You can question whether he was doing a good job with that other stuff too. I mean, it just seems like this is a completely separate job that needs to exist now, and I think will exist at every college football program within the next 5 years.
Yeah, if they're serious about winning, absolutely. You absolutely must have this position in place. He has to be credentialed, and he has to be, most important, empowered to do these jobs. And they are not easy. And the college game is just, this is the start of the evolution. So there will be missteps. And that's the hard part of all this, is intercollegiate athletics still hasn't established what the rules are going to be. At least in the NFL, you know what the rules are. It's very clear. And that's what's going to be interesting about Virginia Tech's search for a general manager, whoever else is out there looking for them, is, are there people living the NFL life right now who know what the standards are, what the parameters are? Are they interested in leaving that certainty for the complete uncertainty of the college world?
Whit, one of the quotes he had yesterday in his statement, he said, "I'm confident you will soon see a modernized structure built for success in this rapidly changing environment of college athletics, more in line with professional football organizational structure on the football side of things," which is what you mentioned. I want to dive in a little bit to the second part of that, which is, and from an athletic department standpoint, a structure and organization more in line with corporate business. And he mentioned that it has become $150 million to $200 million enterprise. What do you make of the corporate structure he kind of mentioned and hinted at there, and what that means for Virginia Tech athletics and the structure of it as a whole?
I think that means, David, or I interpret it to mean that there is going to be board oversight of athletics. I don't know if there will be a formal athletics board that WIT reports to, but I think there will be. Board of Visitors members are business people, accomplished business people. And I think they are going to have a large say in how Virginia Tech athletics is run moving forward. And in a way, it's very understandable, because the university is about to commit a ton of money to supporting this football program in this athletics department. And guys, we haven't even touched on this. That commitment, that report, if there is a formal report from McCarthy and Jay Pearson, from Ryan McCarthy, that is the big moment for Virginia Tech. And I trust that their creative people are hard at work, because I think the report and the plan is done. That's how I interpreted WIT yesterday. That rollout is so crucial. And God bless Doug Bowman for kind of stumbling across WIT's slideshow on the BOV website and saying, hey, look what they're going to talk about. That can't be how this is rolled out, where somebody just stumbles across it online. This has to be choreographed and planned and shouted from the rooftops to people. This is what we're doing. These are the commitments we are making, because I'll tell you who's watching. Prospective coaches, prospective general managers, prospective athletes, and their agents. And that is your sales pitch. That is the beginning of it for everything that's going to follow. And man, you cannot overstate the importance of that.
So I was also listening to the Emergency podcast Sunday night driving back from Richmond. If you had told me when I bought a ticket to the Diamonds final game a month ago that that's where I was going to be when Brent Pry got fired, I would have told you what happened. Well, that happened. So I was driving back from Richmond. Actually, was talking to David, who was driving back from Richmond, who was at a wedding. up in New Hampshire. And Andy, you and Chris's back and forth the last like 15 minutes of the podcast was just like elite, like going back and forth certain names and everything. So I want to chime Teel in here, and you guys have talked about some of these names, but I want to get your thoughts here too. I listed some names about who could be Virginia Tech's next head coach. These guys have all been connected multiple different places. I listed in 3 different categories: pretty realistic, out there, and not going to happen, but have to mention. First off, why is Shane Beamer and Michael Vick not going to be the head coach of Virginia Tech?
Michael Vick has coached 3 games. Not just 3 games as a head coach. He's coached 3 games. Not going to happen. And I don't think Michael Vick would want it to happen if you sat down with him and gave him truth serum. As much as, it would be such a warm, heartwarming story. No. You must have established head coaching chops for this job at this moment in time. So hard pass on Michael Vick. And Andy, you and I have talked about this, and Andy mentioned it on the Sunday pod, I believe. Shane Beamer, number one, makes almost twice as much money as Brent Pry was making. I've been to his facility in Columbia. I've seen what they've built there, and I know they got run by Diego Pavi and company the other day.
It happens.
Yes. How about that? And he's in a much better place right now, and he's in a much more comfortable place. He loves Columbia. His family loves Columbia, and I don't think we can overstate the importance of that. He's got 3 kids and a wife he has to answer to, and he loves it there. When they talk about Coach Beamer in Columbia, it's Shane. When they talk about Coach Beamer in Blacksburg, it will always be Shane's dad, and he knows it. And I just don't think he wants any part of it, especially right now where the program is.
Okay. We've talked about guys it won't be. Let's say you're given a hefty sum of money that you can to go get a head coach out there, $8 million, $9 million, whatever it takes to get a head coach. The board's going to come through here, I feel like. You're going to be able to have this money. This is you, David Teel, that has this money. Who do you hire as Virginia Tech's next head coach?
That would depend on so many different things. Who's my general manager? What's that relationship going to be? But if you're opening up that $8 million bank vault, then is somebody like Matt Campbell at Iowa, does he come into play? Because he's so well regarded in the industry. Does he have Commonwealth connections? No. But the whole connections thing in today's modern era is overblown and perhaps irrelevant. So he could come into the mix. John Sumrall at Tulane is going to have SEC options. But if all of a sudden you're talking about SEC money at a place like Virginia Tech where the people care passionately, and perhaps the route to the college football playoff in the ACC is a little less arduous than the SEC, maybe he could be in the mix. Alex Golish at USF, who has done such a good job thus far with the Bulls, who most people have pegged for the SEC. I think he could come into the mix at that point. So those are 3 that would immediately come to mind. And there's another one I want to talk about, Andy, that you and I have talked about before, but we'll get to him.
Well, I want to ask you, you mentioned Matt Campbell. I don't know how realistic he is. I feel like if he was going to leave Iowa State, he has had the opportunity to do this already. He's taken them to the Fiesta Bowl. They were 11-3 last year. Didn't leave after that. I don't feel like he's ever been presented or has not been presented with money before. I feel like he's had the opportunity to leave for other places and hasn't. And he's a Mount Union guy. That's a big culture school there, Division III. I wonder if he just really likes Iowa State. I wonder if he wants to make that his place.
It could be his destination gig. But let's remember, I think there was only a handful of Power 4 openings in the last cycle. So the options were pretty limited. And that's another interesting aspect of the Virginia Tech search. And there's already 3 P4 jobs open: Virginia Tech, UCLA, Stanford. And there's going to be potentially a lot more. So who is Virginia Tech competing against? Does this early start give the Hokies a little bit of advantage, especially after the board announcement comes out and people know what Virginia Tech is in position to offer?
Florida might be open next week, for all we
Yeah.
know. Wisconsin might come open. I hate to say it.
Maybe,
Luke Fickell,
maybe
not
that's
exactly.
right up your alley.
Yeah, not exactly humming along there. I feel it was really quiet last year, like you mentioned. I do feel like, yes, a lot of things could come open this year.
It's weird that Luke Fickell never worked out at Wisconsin, or is not yet at least. I mean, he was the apple in everybody's eye at
Tell
Cincinnati.
me about it. Yeah,
It's
I've been-
just weird to me.
Bizarre. I don't quite get it.
Okay.
Teal, what do you make of some of these coaches that are not currently employed? A Jimbo Fisher,
Ooh, now we're gonna
a Dave Clawson, and somebody you and Andy talked about last week, Pat Fitzgerald. I mean, those are names, guys who have won at different places and have shown that they can build programs, but they're in a weird spot right now.
They are. A couple interesting. I kind of went down a rabbit hole with Pat Fitzgerald yesterday, and because I'm just fascinated by his background and the potential of him being a Virginia Tech candidate. Guys, Pat Fitzgerald is 50 years old. Brent Pry was 51 when he was hired with no head coaching experience. So Pat Fitzgerald is younger right now than Brent Pry when he was hired. Pat Fitzgerald has 17 years of Power 4 head coaching experience. That's remarkable. Not only that, you go down the laundry list of Northwestern coaches over the last 90 some odd years. There are some pretty good names on that list, including Ara Parsegian, Gary Barnett, Dennis Green. Pat Fitzgerald had a better winning percentage at Northwestern than all of them. That's pretty doggone impressive. And I had forgotten just how great a player he was. I mean, that dude's in the College Football Hall of Fame. He won back-to-back Nagurski Awards. He was on the Northwestern team that played in the Rose Bowl. And man, it ended poorly, but he was exonerated in that legal case with Northwestern in the hazing incident. But as Andy and I have talked about, the hurdle you have to clear with Fitzgerald is how poorly his last 2 seasons went, and it was bad. And again, it was a different era. NIL and athlete compensation and the portal had really not hit overdrive like they have now. I just think he's a fascinating case study.
I covered him for one game. It was Auburn against Northwestern. I think it was the 2008 Outback Bowl in Tampa. And I can tell the players on that team really liked him, liked playing for him. They played hard for him. There's sort of a myth making about him from some of the media members there too. They really got into this, like his background is like he's a Chicago guy and he Chicago Catholic guy who takes a visit to Notre Dame with his dad. And he looks around and he said, "Dad, it's not for me." And he came back to Northwest. This is like a beat writer saying this about this guy. So it's like they really bought into Team Fit. Like that's so Fitz. That's so Fitz. So I don't know if he still has that kind of clout right now with the local beat, but it seemed like they really liked building him up when he was there.
Yeah, and David, you mentioned Dave Clawson, and I'm not sure Dave Clawson is sure if he wants to get back in, but he was very good at Wake, and again, it ebbed at the end, and as it did at the beginning at Wake, which you knew it would when he took over for Coach Grove, but he won at Wake, he won at Richmond. He won at Bowling Green. He is an exceptional coach. He's a very interesting man. I like him personally. Have known him for a long time. And, it would take the right job for him to jump back in, which again brings me back to this month and Virginia Tech's rollout of this new organizational and economic model for the athletic department and specifically the football program. Candidates are going to be watching. Is there alignment at Virginia? What do you hear coaches talk about all the time? Alignment. They want to be aligned with their AD and their president. And that's how successful organizations run. And if they sense there is alignment at Virginia Tech, they're going to be a whole lot more inclined to take a call from Witt or from their agent or whoever is first making the pitch.
What about the Jimbo fit? Do you see any fit there at Virginia Tech? Obviously, he's a West Virginia guy. Maybe flamed out a little bit at Florida State, and I would argue maybe never even got off the mat at Texas A&M. But do you see the fit at Virginia Tech at all?
I think he could be, Carter. Jimbo is an acquired taste. And I got to give Andy credit. It's one of the best lines of the year so far. When it was announced that Jimbo was going to be on ACC Network, Andy's remark was, I pity the person who has to do the closed captioning for Jimbo because, oh my gosh, that man talks he'd be a nightmare to cover because how do you transcribe the guy? He's such a fast talker. And I just remember the Florida State tenure is what we're most familiar with because we don't cover the SEC and Texas A&M. And it just seemed that whenever things went sideways in Tallahassee, it was somebody else's fault. And Jimbo was not shy about blaming others publicly. And now maybe he's learned and he's a little humbled. I think you'd have to be pretty darn sure that was the case before you jumped in with Jimbo.
Teel, there's a program just up the road here that has been pretty successful that you're very familiar with. Could Virginia Tech do a lot worse than Bob Chesney if he ended up being the guy for this job?
Yes, they absolutely could do a lot worse. And it was a great comparison you made between James Madison football and VCU basketball. And Chesney's one of those guys. Now, he lacks Power 4 experience. And for some, that would be a red flag, and I get it. But one thing I've learned being around Chesney, I haven't been around him a lot, don't want to oversell it, but I have been around him some, and I have listened to him a bunch, is he is very attuned to the NFL model. Not necessarily the salary cap, general manager, analytics side, but just how their preseasons, how their practices are structured and how they approach game prep. And he goes to NFL franchises and observes and asks and listens. And I find that fascinating. And that's why I think I would give him a pass on the lack of Power 4 experience, because as the Power 4 becomes more professionalized, I think he's pretty accustomed to that from the homework he's done over the years. But you're talking about somebody who's won at Division III and FCS and now FBS. Did I like the way he handled his quarterbacks at Louisville a couple Friday nights ago? No. But that doesn't mean he's not a really exceptional football coach. I think he is. And he has assembled a really good staff. And I think JMU is going to be a problem for folks the rest of the season. So I think his star will ascend as we go through the rest of 2025.
The name that hasn't come up yet, that continues to come up with me, is Dan Mullen at UNLV. I think he could win immediately at Virginia Tech. Obviously, you look at what he did at Mississippi State, then at Florida, he had the one bad year, and then obviously he's in his first season at UNLV, but that is a doable situation from a monetary standpoint. And UNLV has very publicly been out there about they can only afford the first 2 years of his contract. Do you see Dan Mullen potentially being a fit at Virginia Tech, and is he somebody that's maybe going to be in play for the Hokies?
He's been interested before. Now, whether that interest was mutual is another story. I think Dan and his agent would like you to believe that the interest is mutual. I'm not convinced. But what led to Mullen's demise, from all accounts, not like we were ground floor, was he didn't recruit well enough in Gainesville. Now again, how important is high school recruiting now? Certainly less so than before, but I don't think it's unimportant either. So you have to be all in on that. And as we've talked about, the general manager will be very involved, not only with the portal, but also with high school prospects. Yeah, I can see Mullen being viable, and he's been in the SEC not once but twice, and so far, the reviews in Vegas are pretty good.
Teel, is there a name we haven't mentioned yet that should be on our radar? A Charles Huff, Jamie Chadwell, Ryan Silverfield. I feel like these names pop up on a lot of these lists. Is there anybody that you think we haven't mentioned yet that should be?
Well, I think those are names. Jeff Monken at Army. The last two Service Academy coaches who came into the ACC did pretty darn well. George Welsh and Paul Johnson went pretty good jobs at UVA and Georgia Tech. Won them some ACC championships. And I'm not sure Monken would be wedded to the option coming from Army, but man, he's done a great job there. Somebody it's worth kicking the tires on. And you've got to be out there and exploring all your options and vetting candidates and just kind of doing your best to figure out what makes them tick and how they run their programs. And again, that's a little bit of the advantage that Virginia Tech has now. They can really dive into their research.
This is kind of on that point. This is interesting timing. Just you've played 3 games. You've got 9 games remaining. It's like 12 weeks of a season left. And here you are. You have all this time in terms of a coaching search. When you were talking about Bob Chesney, you mentioned that you feel like he's really going to draw more interest as JMU continues to have a really good season. You feel like with a lot of these potential candidates that we're seeing all over the place, that as the season goes on, their stock might go way up or way down just based on the simple fact of, their program, what they're doing. Because it feels like a guy like Alex Golish, they got off to a great start. Feels like his stock is up right now. But if USF, only finishes with 7 wins, you're sitting here talking about, okay, maybe he's not as great of a hire as we thought in week 4. Is that kind of the feel you have on this?
I think, David, your point is quite well taken, especially with somebody such as Golish, because the sample size is so small. Because USF is his first head coaching rodeo, so you don't have that larger sample size that you would with, say, a Dan Mullen or a Bob Chesney, who have been head coaches for much longer. So if USF all of a sudden finishes 6-6 or 7-5, that shine, I think, diminishes considerably. Whereas if JMU only goes 7-5 and is a middling Sun Belt team, there's still some meat on that coaching resume, as opposed to somebody who's only been doing it for 2 or 3 years.
I want to go back to Pat Fitzgerald real fast because I know you guys mentioned him last week and we just talked about him. And you, David, had mentioned that he was exonerated at Northwestern. Do you still see that being an issue at Virginia Tech? Do you think would that cause any sort of concern in the president's office at Virginia Tech and for the Board of Visitors too?
I think they'd have to vet the heck out of it, and I think they'd have to ask Pat Fitzgerald some very pointed questions, and I think they'd be very fair questions. And if he wants to get back in, then he's going to have to answer those questions. And if he has nothing to hide, then I believe he will, and I think he would be convincing. I do know this, guys. Pat Fitzgerald's boss for a long time at Northwestern was Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner. Jim Phillips thinks the world of Pat Fitzgerald. He did when he was at Northwestern, and that has not changed, I assure you.
Teel, we've been asking you what's best for Virginia Tech, what kind of hire they need to make. What's best for us writers here? Who would be the most entertaining coach here? I think for the SEO purposes of this podcast, we have to mention John Gruden out there just to get that name in the podcast. Ed Ogeron, who would be the most fun coach to cover, do you think?
Hashtag content, right? I mean, come on. Don't we need at the end of every television interview Ed Ogeron say, go Hokies?
He would certainly stock Merriman with a lot of Red Bull, from what I hear. That's my understanding. He used to have just like a fridge of Red Bull in his Ole Miss office. And I remember one reporter down there said he'd go in there and he's talking to him. He's like, sit down. You want a Red Bull? He would offer Red Bull. That's how he would welcome people in his office. That would be, I don't know if it would result in wins. It certainly would be fun to cover somebody like that.
Yes, entertainment value. If you want sheer entertainment value, and this isn't going to happen, but I think the most fun coach in America to cover would be Kiffin. I just find the guy to be laugh out loud funny. I love how he trolls people. And, is he a little smug? Hell yeah, he is, but I don't care. I mean, and the cat wins football games, and the bit with you freeze and golf. And if y'all haven't watched it, I encourage all your viewers to go back to like SEC Media Days and watch Kiffin's interview with Feinbaum. Those two have this thing, and it's hard to describe, but their interactions are priceless.
Did you guys see the other day when the basketball got on the field at Ole Miss and the ref threw it to Ole Miss's sideline and he put his hands out like it was a hoop and it went through?
You mentioned the Feinbaum thing after Alabama lost to Florida State in the opener. I think Kiffin the next day was on Feinbaum. He was like, really proud that you came to work today after that tough loss over the weekend. He has that kind of rapport with him.
Teel, on a slightly different note, Virginia Tech, obviously looking for a new football coach. It seems like the other Power 4 school in the Commonwealth is doing pretty well right now, 2-1. But I saw some discussions on our message boards and on social media about this. I don't know what the rest of the season looks like for Tony Elliott in Virginia, but if you were looking at both of them, kind of like blind resumes, the Virginia and Virginia Tech head coaching job, what is the differentiator there? And how important is the September 30th date for the Hokies in terms of the alignment that you previously mentioned in swinging it maybe Virginia Tech's way in terms of everybody being on the same page there? Because it seems like Carla Williams and UVA have done an okay job of that. I'm just curious to get your kind of thoughts of where those two jobs stack up, and we obviously don't know what the future holds for Tony Elliott.
The Cavaliers did a hell of a lot better job in the portal than the Hokies did this offseason. I think that much is clear. And I think it is somewhat of talent evaluation, but I think money's involved, because money always is involved when it comes to athlete acquisition. And the Cavaliers certainly hit it on the quarterback front. Now, Virginia Tech wasn't in the market for a starting quarterback. The Cavaliers were, and they found one in Chandler Morrison. Yeah, we don't know how the rest of the season's going to go. They should be 3-0. They're not. The loss at NC State, I think, could haunt them, because that was a game they should have won. They're going in for that game-winning touchdown, and then Morris did the one thing he could not do on that play. He's got a timeout in his pocket. There's still a minute to go. You can't throw a pick in the end zone there. Throw it away or make darn sure it's completed. But David, and you guys know this better than I, your boots on the ground in Blacksburg. Virginia Tech cares so much more about football than UVA does, the rank and file. And that's not going to change. And the Virginia Tech football brand is so much better than UVA's. Yes, is September 30th or whenever they roll it out, paramount importance. But presuming that, and there better be numbers involved, by the way, like hard and fast numbers. This is what we are doing to upgrade our athletic department and more specifically the football program. And I believe there will be numbers. And when those come out, then I think it's not even close as to what the better job is.
Just to kind of zigzag a little bit before we wrap it up, and I want to mention this because I haven't seen it talked about a lot. Obviously, the portal is open for Virginia Tech. Anybody can enter the transfer portal and redshirt. Dante Lovett is the only one to currently have publicly done so. For his sake, like, how does that work for his NIL and his rev sharing? Does he still get, like, how does that work for anybody at Virginia Tech or UCLA who enters the transfer portal and opts not to play this season in 2025?
We don't know. We don't know what the contract looks like. You know, Carter, until we get a look at these contracts, and I don't know that we ever will, then we don't know. And probably everybody's contract is different. And this is pro football, guys. And some contracts are incentive laden, some are guaranteed. But anyone who enters into a guaranteed contract with a college athlete that doesn't have clauses in it about the portal and leaving the team is a fool. And I can't imagine that Virginia Tech would be on the hook for something. Now, were there advance payments up front? Probably. And I doubt he's going to be cutting them a check as a refund.
Yeah. I've just seen that talked about quite a bit, and I don't know if that's been cleared up. So I wanted to ask about it.
No, I don't think, I think it's a perfectly legitimate question, but I don't think it's going to be cleared up.
Very fair. Very fair. You guys get anything else? Awesome podcast, by the way.
Yeah, Teel, 2031, Charlotte. You're still covering the Hokies at that point? Charlotte against the Badgers?
I mean, I'll go ahead and throw it out there. I will be 72 years old when that game is played. Am I still ready? I
think
don't
you're
know.
still working.
I hope
72,
so.
I would imagine. Come on now, you got to make it to that potential game in Madison in 2032. I think you need to get up there.
I know.
See the 30-year completion of this series, going all the way back to when it was scheduled.
Yeah. And I think Jill, my wife, she has heard and seen what a great college town Madison is. She would love to come on that trip. And hey, the good Lord willing, and my very, very generous employers, hopefully, it keeps on going. The newspaper industry is not what you would call growth potential right now. But if we can keep it going, and if I just keep getting on that Peloton every morning and keeping my scrawny butt in shape, hopefully we'll be there with you at Bank of America Stadium.
I'm just ready for the bitter ball, man.
The bitter
I've been ready
ball?
for it for 2 decades now, 3 decades. Never feels like it's going to happen.
Yeah, were you a student when that game was put on the schedule? Like, serious
shortly,
question.
Shortly after, I think it was a year or 2 after I graduated, that went on
Okay.
the schedule, and I'll be in my 50s at that point when the game is actually played. So it's been a minute, and they have not played that game. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah,
No doubt.
you're 20 years younger than I am, Andy.
That's right on the dot. So yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, David, look, we really appreciate your time. A lot to talk about, obviously, and it's weird to have a coaching change in the middle of September. But the good news about it is there's going to be a lot to talk about over the next 2.5 months. So we appreciate you hopping on, and hopefully you have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, guys. Enjoyed it.
For the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel, for David Cunningham, for Andy Bitter, for Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from another edition of Talking with Teel, and we'll talk to you very soon.